It's time to talk about Thunderbird. Hold on, don't go anywhere. I promise this is actually going to be a really fun conversation. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play back a really fun conversation that I had with some awesome folks over at Thunderbird, specifically Jason and Alex. We talked about all kinds of things, including, but not limited to, the history of Thunderbird, where it's been, where it is today, and where it's going. We'll also address the elephant in the room. Is Thunderbird dead? What's going on with the project? Also, are email clients a thing of the past, or are they still relevant today? Now, this particular conversation actually went over an hour, but it was just so much fun. I thought about editing it down, but you know what? I'm just going to play it back as is. And actually, at the end, Jason actually dropped some knowledge bombs that you're definitely not going to want to miss. So let's go ahead and play back the conversation. It was a lot of fun, like I mentioned. I think you're going to like it. So here it is. So I'm here with two really awesome people from Thunderbird, Alex and Jason. Jason, I've actually spoke to before. Alex, I have not. So we're going to talk about Thunderbird today, which is really amazing to me because anytime anyone ever says email clients are dead, obviously they're not. I've been using Thunderbird since I think the first release or maybe one or two after that, but very close to the beginning. And I can't imagine life without it myself. And I'm absolutely honored to talk to two individuals from the project. How you guys doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us, I guess.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. I'm doing really well. I didn't expect to be on your channel in this capacity, but it's still awesome. So yeah, thanks for taking the time tonight. Appreciate it.
Well, speaking of being on my channel, I would say if anyone has a problem with you being on my channel, let me know in the comments below. And like nobody is going to have a problem with it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to say, please do it again.
Happy to.
So that being said, I'm absolutely happy to talk to you again as well. So we have a bunch of things to talk about. But first of all, I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves and just talk about what your role with Thunderbird happens to be. And Jason, I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, my name's Jason Evangelo. You might know me from Linux for Everyone or Forbes. Recently, I was hired on as Thunderbird's marketing manager. So my job as marketing manager is, this is going to sound strange, but it's essentially doing what I already love, which is building community for an open source brand and just kind of trying to bring everybody together, trying to amplify, brand awareness and create content around Thunderbird and just get people excited about it. And yeah, it's strange. The marketing name is a strange one because it's almost a hybrid between marketing and community manager. That's kind of my role here, and I'm loving it so far. It's a great team, really passionate team at Thunderbird. It's awesome.
They chose a really great person for the job. Absolutely. I stand behind it 100% because when I saw that you got the job, my first reaction was like, you're living my dream, my previous dream, because I've wanted to work on a project like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I love what I'm doing now. But, there was that time where I was like, what would that be like? And I think that, choosing somebody passionate like you was definitely a great decision.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
All right. So
it's my turn.
Yep.
It's my turn, I guess. Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alessandro. Alex. It's easier. Everyone calls me Alex. I'm the lead UX architect at Thunderbird, which is a fancy role name. I basically take care of the interface and the user experience. I've been working at Thunderbird for almost 4 years now. I'm a huge open source advocate, Linux lover, and all the good stuff. Speaking about dream job, this is a dream job for me. I've always wanted to work on an open source project, something that doesn't it's not like it's a project that is not made for money or just to cash out or the next round of investments or things like that. It's actually something open, free for the user that helps maintain privacy and it's ethical and respects everything. I just love it. It's one of the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for all the things that we've been doing, that I've been working on for the past 4 years. A lot of things have changed and will continue changing. But like every project, especially Thunderbird, has a rich history. It's been around for 2 decades, more than 2 decades. There are a lot of moving pieces that need to happen to make all the changes, the proper changes that we want to bring in this new version of Thunderbird. But yeah, I'm extremely happy to work on this with amazing people around me. And Jason, the last addition to our team, I was ecstatic when I knew that he was hired, because I've been following Jason on his online journey and is a extremely talented person. So very happy to have him on board.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're telling the truth. So
yeah, exactly.
It really is, though. It's a dream job for both of us. There's no question.
And on my end, I mean, obviously I'd introduce myself, but it's my channel. So I think I've done that. So
who are you?
who am I? I don't know. Isn't that like the biggest philosophical question of all? Who we are? I mean, we can get into quantum physics and talk about how reality is actually created from the bending of, random. I'm going to stop. So for me, the whole thing comes full circle, and I just love these moments. And there's been several since I went on my own. Like I said, I started using Thunderbird. It might have been the first release. I don't know. It was somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure it was before Firefox 4 came out, if I'm not mistaken. And it was such a different time in my career because I worked for the company, and what they did was everyone was using Microsoft Office, and then they were a very impulsive company. I know that's weird, like a company that's impulsive, like no one works for an impulsive company, but they just decided to get away from Microsoft Office and everything related to it, which included rolling out Thunderbird to everybody in the company. And at the time, Open Office to everybody in the company, which I was ecstatic about that. I was, oh gosh, that's great. I just started learning Linux. I wasn't even that far along. And it was great. So, I mean, of course, people hate change and there's complaints everywhere. I was on Cloud 9 using it. And at that time, I remember approaching the IT team of that company. And I remember saying, I really want to get into the IT field. And if you have any simple tasks that I could work on just to kind of pad my resume, if you need to stick a RAM inserted or a keyboard brought to somebody, just have me do it so I can learn. That's how long ago it was that I started using Thunderbird, just to kind of put that in perspective. So everything is different now. And one thing, I'm sure we'll talk about this, we'll talk about the history in a moment. That's kind of where we'll start the conversation. But I personally feel like not everything belongs in the browser. That's my opinion. I think there's some things that belong in the browser. There's some things that I really appreciate is outside of the browser. And Thunderbird is just something that I, like I mentioned before, it's the way I do email. It always has been. I have my Ansible scripts that build my email profiles. I mean, it's integrated. So, and we're going to maybe get into that later, but I think we wanted to kind of start with the history because anybody who's been following the news, and there's been so many events, ups and downs that I've noticed that I can't even remember to mention any in particular. But Alex, I kind of feel like you could probably speak to the history of like where Thunderbird was and, where it is now. And then we could talk about where it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm extremely curious about your Ansible scripts because I use Ansible as well to set up my remote server. So we will talk about that later. Also, disclaimer, like I never stop talking, so feel free to interrupt me whenever. Otherwise, I will continue for hours.
That's my problem, actually. So.
Bother everyone to death.
I think given the present company, then we're all screwed. It's probably going to be a 4-hour conversation. So yeah.
Awesome. The longest and more like wholesome video that will ever be published out there. Okay, so yes, I agree with you first. Your emails, like not every single application, especially your emails, should not just be on a browser, inside a browser. You should not be tied with just using whatever browser you end up using for every single application, which is funny to say because Thunderbird, it's actually on a browser, like technically, because Thunderbird is built on top of Firefox. Firefox is the basic architecture that we use, and then Thunderbird is literally HTML, CSS, and JavaScript running on top of Firefox. So technically, theoretically, we're kind of an Electron app, but better than an Electron app because we use the Gecko engine of Firefox and not Electron. So which is faster, it's built in C++ and Rust, so it's very low-level programming, and it doesn't have all the issues that Electron apps come with. So you're still in a browser, but it looks like like a desktop application, which is great. It gives us all the flexibility that that a desktop application gives us. And the history of Thunderbird. So I can speak only for the recent history because I've been around for just 4 years. I've been using Thunderbird as a user for 15 years on and off, pretty much. I also come from Microsoft Outlook, whatever, because of the business I was before we were using that. Everyone was using that. But Thunderbird originally was part of the whole Mozilla messaging type of approach and project, and then it spun out to its own implementation. And Thunderbird has always been extra code running on top of Firefox. There's always happened like that. And it's been tightly coupled and following the Firefox source code, especially at the time when JavaScript wasn't as powerful and there were a lot of technologies that were used that nowadays are not used anymore, like XBL or Zool. We're getting rid of Zool and using standard HTML, where at that time, HTML, standard markup HTML wasn't anything. We couldn't do many things in terms of layout. So there's always been like a tight relationship between the source code of Thunderbird and the source code of Firefox. Then with time, unfortunately, I don't really know the reasons why, but with time, less and less investments, money, and development resources were put into Thunderbird. So Thunderbird started being more and more independent from the Firefox developers. Before, whenever there was a new release, all the things were tested also against Thunderbird to make sure that nothing break. But there was a time, I would say like 10 years ago, where there was kind of a split, and Mozilla started like not supporting Thunderbird anymore, not wanting to have Thunderbird as Mozilla Thunderbird. They wanted to show it as a completely separate project because there weren't any resources involved in it. So Thunderbird was kind of like in maintenance mode, and it turned completely into a community-driven project. So external contributors, community members, anyone with a little bit of programming knowledge were able to contribute and keep Thunderbird alive, which it was great because that's where the strength of Thunderbird comes. A massive community behind Thunderbird that feels the ownership of this program. And it's still the same. Everything is like that. And we continue to champion ourselves to make sure that our community is involved in every step of the way. We don't do anything behind closed doors. Everything is released publicly on mailing lists and has always been like that. And we continue to accept any community feedback, community contribution. Anyone can jump on Bugzilla and push some code and ask for a review, and we will accept it absolutely. So Thunderbird turned into entirely donation-based application, software, business, whatever, just to sustain the project itself. And through campaigns and donation campaigns and reach out, we were able to remain healthy and on business for many, many years. And most recently, thanks to Ryan Sipes, which was before it was the community manager, System 76, if I'm not wrong, he was hired as initially as a community manager, marketing manager, then he grew in other roles. But his first objective was to increase donations. And thanks to his amazing work that he did like 6 years ago, we were able to increase donation to an average of $1.2, $1.5 million per year, almost consistently, and keep growing.
Wow.
So
sorry, Alex,
amazing.
to interrupt, but when you came on to Thunderbird 4 years ago,
yeah,
how many full-time employees were working on Thunderbird?
Yeah, so 4 years ago, we had, if I'm not wrong, I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that, but this is going on the internet, whatever. We had like 2 or 3 full-time employees, which only 2 of them, 2 out of 3 were developers. We had 1 developer full-time and 1 release engineer full-time, and then Ryan as a community manager. And everyone else was a temporary contractor, external contributors, unpaid contributors, whatever, supporters, anything else. Yeah. So when I arrived on board, I think I was the 4th or 5th contractor to be actually hired and paid to work on Thunderbird. And today we are like 16 full-time employees, fully paid. If I'm not wrong,
20.
20. Okay.
20. And I believe it will be 22 by the end of this month.
Boom.
And yeah, that's a massive increase in resources, you know?
Yeah.
Development, it's astounding.
Yeah, absolutely. And these, just to give an overview of the people that say, oh, Thunderbird is a dead project. I haven't heard of Thunderbird in many, many years, in months. It's not a dead project, but it's true that we were entirely, completely silent because the only 2-3 people involved in the projects were just struggling or just working everything they could do to just keep it up and running and keep it building. And there was a time for Thunderbird 61 or 62, if I'm not wrong, between like the 50 release and the 60 release cycle, where we couldn't actually build every time. So we were behind Firefox builds because we didn't have the resources to fix issues. The Firefox developers weren't involved in maintaining anything for Thunderbird because they had different objectives. So we skipped a lot of releases for that time, and that gave out the actually correct impression that, oh, Thunderbird is not going to be around for much longer. But then when you look at our user base, we consistently had an average of 20 million active users per month, which is insane if you think about like a project that is maintained by 2 people having an average of 20 million users per month. So how is that possible?
I mean, that's like wow, that's more users than I have in views on this entire channel.
I mean, the interesting question there is probably like, Jay, why are you still using Thunderbird, right? It's probably the same reason all these other people are using Thunderbird.
I think there's a big disconnect. I'm sorry if there's an audio delay. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, I think there's this disconnect in the industry between IT analysts and the users. And I feel like there's a lot of conclusions that are jumped to that end up being incorrect, which actually, I feel it does real damage in the industry. I don't think people realize this. So I was actually, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask, and I'll answer your question in a minute, but I was going to ask, the IT analysts, they probably still are, but I know at least at one point, they were perpetuating that email clients, standalone email clients are dead. And I've never believed that. And I've had previous, situations and things that had news that IT analysts are saying X and then Y ends up happening. And I'm like, why are people listening to these people? And I'm almost wondering, did Mozilla kind of take that as reality? Did that myth that the IT analysts were perpetuating actually become like someone's truth within Mozilla? Is that possible?
I don't know. I don't think so. I cannot speak for them because I wasn't involved in that. But I think like the main focus was moving on the browser and the browser part, because it was the main focus of their objective and deliverables. There was never a time where anyone thought, oh, email is dead or email is going to be outdated. If you look at now history of the web technology, everything is cyclical. We're going back now. The the keywords and all the rage is like decentralized and not like in-house, and everything is decentralized and it's safer and it's private and things like that. Email is the actual original decentralized medium that has always been around. You can set up your email server wherever you want. You can have multiple email servers. It's entirely natively decentralized and private. You can make it as private as possible. You can do whatever you want with it, or you can use a service that it's available out there. So it's actually the true private solution for your communication. And there are a lot of encryption technologies that work with email. There's OpenPGP, there's SMIME, there's AutoCrypt. There are like many solutions to make it even more safe. So there was never a time where email was dead. And you can see also, I think the perception of these IT analysts is if there's not a new thing, and you can put thing whatever, like a new update or a new technology or a new icon or a new user interface or a new color, whatever new thing you put, every year, it means that the project is dead. And that's the only like actual metric that they see. Now we expect every year to have a new phone. We expect every year to have a new operating system, a new project, or every year the same application that you use has to have a completely new user interface, new branding, because otherwise, if for a couple, 2-3 years, it's the same, it means it's dead, no one is working on. And that's the strength of Thunderbird. Thunderbird, yes, it looked like it was dormant for all those years, but actually all the work that was going into it was in the backend, keeping it stable, keeping it running, not crashing, not destroying your CPU, not destroying your RAM, keeping it buildable, keeping it multi-platform, Linux, macOS, and Linux, and Windows. Linux, macOS, and Linux is great. So that...
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying Linux and Linux.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there's more than one. There's obviously a bunch of distributions of different versions with libraries. I mean, I can go on. So why do I use Thunderbird? So another thing to understand that I have to mention to understand my stance on email in general. So there seems to be this mentality that everything is going to be consolidated into this one thing. And no matter how many people like perpetuate that, it never ends up being true, because you can't assume that every user wants things the same. That's never going to happen. Users are never going to be 100% aligned on everything. It's just not going to happen. So I'll hear things like email clients are dead because webmail has really like become much more useful than it ever has been, which is true. I will absolutely say Gmail has a lot of really cool features, and they've added a bunch. That doesn't mean that everybody wants Gmail. And then I'll hear people say, everything is just going to go into Slack or equivalent, and that kind of instant messaging thing is going to be the one thing. No, because I feel like there's a place for that. And there's also a place for Thunderbird. So to answer the question, why do I use it? First of all, no other email client, for me personally, speaking just for me, has all the features I'm looking for. You can add extensions to Thunderbird. I never do. I unless it comes bundled, I don't use it. I just haven't had a need for any extensions. As it is how I use it. And there's something to be said, especially as a business owner, for being able to control communication in a way. For example, I don't want everything in Slack or insert name of messenger here, because already I feel like in the industry we deal with what I call notification hell. This is the reality of IT today, okay? You have notifications, and the various phone OSs have come a long way in giving you, the user, a way to say, I don't want that notification, but I do want this one, and just kind of choose which apps are allowed to notify you at any one time. Or you can just completely disable a notification that you don't want to see. But then we get to a point where you receive a notification telling you to turn on notifications for the app. So you have something side channeling that, right? So I've noticed, and this has happened, LinkedIn notifications are turned off. You should turn it on. Like, okay, LinkedIn, how did you notify me of that if I turned off notifications of LinkedIn altogether? And there's this war between notifications and users, and the users just sitting there like, I just don't want to be bothered as often. Like, could you please not? And then when it comes to email, it's so easy to control because I could choose to look at it when it's time to look at it. If I don't have time to respond today, I don't have to. And when it is time to respond, I have a moment to think about it. Because when I get an IM, it's like somebody's talking to me in real time right now. I need to respond. But email, it's like I could really think about the reply. What is the message that I want to send? I could spell check it. I can make sure that I include the right points. I have full control. So what I do is I tell people if it's an emergency, a server's down, right? Or you really need your answer right now. Okay, that's fine for an IM, but for anything else, work-life balance is better, in my opinion, by putting it in email because you have control over when that interrupts you. And at what point, when we get to these notifications, are we going to lose productivity because we have notifications of notifications of notifications?
Good for you for setting those personal boundaries, those work boundaries, those personal and work boundaries. I mean, I kind of can relate with you because we've gotten to this point where even though I think the best way to say it is when you send someone an IM, an instant message, a chat, a text, you expect an answer within an hour, probably. Like you expect it immediately, even if you in the back of your mind, you realize, well, it might be 2 a.m. for that person who's on the West Coast. So maybe I won't hear from them for another 6 hours or so, but it doesn't change the way that you feel. Like you're waiting for a response. You don't have control. And I think email improves the quality of our discourse.
And communication in general, because we have time to really plan things out. And sometimes I could, I don't know if Thunderbird has this feature now, but I've been thinking about using it if it does, where some, web apps are letting you do scheduled send. Because what if I'm working on a Sunday? And this is huge, especially for a business owner. If I reply to an email on a Sunday to somebody, then the vendor, contact, whoever it is, they're going to think that I respond to emails in general on Sundays. I might just be wanting to catch up and get my workload clear before Monday. Maybe I'll just wait to send that email, keep it in drafts for now, and just not send it so I don't let people know that I'm going to talk to them like every day. Or what if it's like 11 at night and I want to respond to an email? Well, I don't want them to receive it and think that they can wake me up at 11. So there's so many things with email. But I think the internet is just built on instant gratification. And that bothers me because sometimes you want that and sometimes you don't. And a perfect example of this, I'm going to leave the name of the vendor out because I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here, but a popular mechanical keyboard manufacturer released this keyboard. They were super proud of it. They were excited about this new keyboard. It had different colored LEDs, which is not really all that, all of them have that. But they had settings on there to where you can have the keys on the keyboard light up a different color depending on which app wants your attention or which notification is coming in. And then a developer responded in the comments on that manufacturer's site. And this developer said, what on earth makes you think we want that? It's bad enough we have notifications like Slack and everything coming to our phone. Like now I can't even write code on my keyboard without being interrupted. Like, why do people think we want this? But my point is controlling the channels of communication is important because we don't want communication to slow us down and make us less productive, which I feel is the problem with some of the things that are coming. And I feel like people are taking that back. No, I'm not okay with this anymore. It's gone too far. I don't want that. Give me an email client. It's better.
I know this is kind of a tangent, but I'll be brief with it. Wired, I think it was Wired, had a really fantastic article arguing for the reinstatement of the classic AOL Instant Messenger away message, to where like your entire online presence, right, was pretty much AOL Instant Messenger back then. And if you were away, you were away. you were unreachable, come back later.
Mhm.
And those barriers are completely obliterated now. You
Right.
know, there's 50 different ways to get in touch with us. We're never truly away.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yeah, a lot of good points here. So first of all, that feature exists right now. It's called Send Later. You can do it in Thunderbird. You can write an email and then click Send Later, and it will put it into your outbox. Right now, it's very bare minimum, so it will send it. It will ask you if you want to send those emails that you set as send later the next time you reopen Thunderbird. So if you write it on a Sunday, you put old send later, then on Monday morning, you open Thunderbird, ask you, hey, you want to send this that you currently have scheduled? Yes. We have plans to give more control on when to send later and setting a time or delay the sending. Or also a very important one is send and then give me a timer, like a 10 seconds delay, where I can block the sending or stop the sending if I spot all of a sudden, oh, wrong address or wrong subject, things like that. Like a temporary undo for a timer that the user can set. To reconnect to what you said about Gmail, everyone is using Gmail, which these IT analysts that say email is dead, everyone is on Gmail. So how it can be dead if everyone is on Gmail? But the thing that Google did pretty well is simplifying a lot the usability of the email. And that's what the majority of the people around there, the majority of the user, they just need that. Like my mom, my dad, they only need an email client that only writes and reads emails. That's it. They don't need scheduling. They don't even need attachments. They don't need calendar integration, nothing. Very, very simple. And Gmail nailed that down, simplified a lot that experience. What Gmail missed completely is that it's too simple and it removes all the customization options, all the preference. So it doesn't cater for different people with different needs. And the criticism that Thunderbird gets most of the times, which is it's absolutely a legit criticism, is that the first impression for a new user, a newcomer, is that it's too much. The learning curve is too steep because there's a lot going on, a lot of buttons, a lot of menus, a lot of settings, just too much. I just want to send an email. Just don't tell me to configure all the things. And we're approaching that problem. We are fixing those problems. We're trying to create like the happy path, a very easy path for newcomers, but also showing without interrupting your experience and showing in context that you can do more and you can customize more. So we're trying to cater for as many people as possible, just maintaining or implementing simplicity, but also offering extreme customization, extreme complexity if the user needs it.
I think, in my opinion, and I thought about this before, that as people are saying, email clients are dead or whatever. I think we've pretty much like annihilated that myth, like overkill at this point. But it's like everything comes back in IT, everything, right? It's weird. The more you think about that, the more obvious it gets. Like email clients, are dropping down. Eventually it's going to spike way up. And I don't even think we've seen that yet. And yeah, we have 20 million users, just wait. Because it's going to explode. I mean, we literally watched as mobile phones were attached to your car and were bigger than the side of your face. Okay. Then they were removed from the car. You could walk around with them. Then they started shrinking, right? We had the Motorola Razr, which is like that big. And then it shrunk down to just a Bluetooth thing in your ear. And then I watched as phones started to grow again. People started to hold them again. Then you had the 6-inch screens come out. Then you had the Galaxy Note, which again is the size of your face. Everything returns back to the way that it was. So you have email clients that are, maybe lowering in some form or fashion. It's going to rise and we're going to go right back to it. So I feel like we're in this. There could even be like this renaissance where it's like we want to control where notifications are, and people are just especially going to get tired of all that. Email clients are waiting right there for us with open arms, welcoming us back to that life.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, it kind of goes back to what we said earlier, where people are going to reach a breaking point. People are going to realize, oh my God, I've got Signal and Messenger and WhatsApp and Telegram and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and all these notifications are horrible for my mental health. They're driving me insane, and it's got to stop.
And I'm glad you said mental health, by the way. That's important.
Yeah, it's a serious factor, and there's going to be pushback. It'll start small, it'll swell, but eventually it's going to happen. It will happen, because I don't think that society can take much more of the constant. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
It's a good point. It's and then we have businesses. Like, I remember a company I was working for before I went on my own. They were thinking about getting rid of email clients and just saying, well, we have Google Apps or whatever, Google Workspace apps or whatever they're calling it this week. I can't keep up. We're just going to get rid of that. And then, half the employees were against it. Half of them were okay with that, right? Because everybody has their own working style. And I think that's important, because if you decide that you want to try an email client, even if you have been using Gmail forever and you've never installed Thunderbird, just give it a shot, because you might find that separation from your browser is a good thing. And maybe the memory usage of your browser footprint will go down too, because you don't have an email client in the browser in the same process tree. That's also an important thing too. And we get to a point where if everything's in the browser crashes, we lose literally every app, everything we have open, because we live in the browser. There's nothing, separation can be a good thing, I think. And I think that's important, that if you want that separation, that it's available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I believe version 1.02 of Thunderbird.
Without the point, 102.
Oh my God, I keep forgetting that, because it's just unbelievable to me, 100.
It's such a weird number, right?
We actually we try to keep the same cadence as Firefox releases.
I'm having trouble with that too, because I've had Ansible jobs crash because I try to download version 100 of Firefox when it came out, and I accidentally chose 1.0.0 from however long ago.
Amazing.
And ultimately, I'm rolling that old version of Firefox out just because my mental state is like, there's dots in version numbers. Oh, wait a minute. No wonder there's no AMD 64 build the way that I was expecting to find. Oh, right. 100. That's where we're at now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
102 is coming.
Yeah, which is interesting. This is another point of confusion for our users, because our versioning number is a bit messed up, because we release version 61. No, it was 62, then 78, then 91, then 102, because we release the extended support release, the ESR version, once a year. But then we also release the beta version once a month, which respects the normal release of Firefox, which releases every month. So we also have Thunderbird 91, 92, 93, 94, but we don't advertise them as much, because those are beta releases, and we focus more of, let's use the next year to put all the new features and all the things that we want to fix for the next ESR that will happen in 12 months. So that's why our release number is kind of weird. It seems like we don't know how to count.
I think everybody is weird, but then think about it this way: we went from Windows 7 to 8 to 10. So nice. And that was I think at this point people might even be getting numb to version numbers. At what point are we going to just say this is Firefox version June of 2023?
Yeah, that's the thing that Microsoft tried to do, right? They wanted to have just Windows 10 is going to be the last release, and then it's going to be like a rolling update. But then they realized that it's a nightmare for bug reports, because how do you identify which version? And Windows, great, they have the same serial versioning number for everything. Even Windows 11 is still Windows NT 10 as version number. So it's awesome. You
can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. It's great for us because we get bug reports with version Windows NT 10, but we cannot reproduce on Windows 10, only on Windows 11. It's like, oh, I see. Okay, this is Windows 11. It's not Windows 10.
It's not confusing at all.
Amazing. Phenomenal. So yeah, version number Doesn't matter much. It matters mostly for bug reports and compatibility with extensions and add-ons, because some extensions, we change the API, we implement new APIs and things like that. So there are some limitations. But other than that, you can keep continuing updating and upgrading Thunderbird once a year, and you most likely won't have any single problem. Sometimes there are problems in upgrade, but we support everything, and we recover things and we fix as much as possible. So yeah,
I'm so great that Thunderbird is alive and well. I was ecstatic when Jason was hired in also, because it's like, well, they're putting real people on this. Like, they're serious. Like this is not a stagnating thing. Like, they want to ramp this up. I feel like when Ryan helped out, was that literally 4 or 5 years ago? Did you say?
I think 6 now.
Wow, like I can't even fathom it actually being that long ago. It feels like just a couple of years ago.
He shifted from his starting role to being the project manager.
Mm-hmm.
But while he was doing that, he was still basically doing my entire job, plus the job of other people, community manager, and he was just stretched really thin. And so
just a little bit.
This allows one person to just concentrate on the content and the community building, and one person to grow the business, basically. And he's doing a great job. I mean, the last 4 years have just gone like this. And I wish we could have had him on. Maybe we can get him on here at some point.
Yeah, it'd be nice to talk to him, because it would also come full circle when he sees Mycroft on the top of Mythelio in the background. So I think that would come full circle for him. So for people that aren't aware, Ryan Sipes, I first heard of him through, I believe it was the Linux Action Show, which is no longer a podcast. They have a different one now, but he was on there talking about Mycroft. And then I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I bought one. That's behind me. And I did a couple of videos with him, which were fun. And then, he goes into Thunderbird, which I'm also using Thunderbird. And then he's working at one point for System 76. So he's all over the place. So I think that would be pretty fun to get him on at some point for sure. So people could know who I'm talking about if they don't already. That'd be also a plus.
Yeah.
So what new features might we find in 102? Like, is there anything super cool coming out?
A lot of new features. 102 is the first release where we're actually pushing things forward. A lot of the work that I've been doing in the past 4 years, and all the other developers have been doing for the past 4 years, were to remove a lot of technical debt and make sure that our architecture-based code base allows to build new features and change things and bring it up to speed and make it more maintainable. A lot of issues that we had in the past where we cannot work on these things because it just breaks and it doesn't build. So we fixed a lot of those in the past 4 years. 102 is going to be actually the first release where you can drastically see a change. If you put together like 91, 78, and 62, they kind of look all the same, all down to 50 and 40. Now 102 is visually starts to get its own identity and its own footprint. The first thing, the most noticeable thing, is the Spaces toolbar, which is a vertical toolbar to the left edge or the right edge, if you're right to left alignment of your screen, to the edge of your application, which collects all the main spaces, main sections of your application. So we got the email space, the calendar, the tasks, the address book, the chat, and the settings area. And that Spaces toolbar is entirely customizable. You can change the background color, the color of the icons, whatever. What's that?
Sorry, I didn't even know that.
Really?
Yeah, there's so much to learn about this.
This is my first time hearing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, absolutely. By default, it looks like a regular toolbar, but you can customize it and make it look like attached to your whatever, like consistent with your desktop environment or the highlight color of your Windows UI or Mac OS, whatever you want to do. It also comes with extension API to allow extension developers to add as many buttons as they want to that Spaces toolbar, and that's going to be the organization of all those buttons that they open a new tab or a new section, or they don't open a dialog or a pop-up or a modal. All those buttons will be recognized as these. If I click here, it opens a completely separated section and it recognizes which section is there. And I love it so much. It's one of the first things that I wanted to work on. Related to that Spaces toolbar, there are a lot of UI changes, tiny bit UI changes that we're putting into it. For the first time, we're implementing our own brand identity. One thing that we will always do, we've always been doing in the past, is that inheriting the toolkit style. That's what we call it, which is the styling and buttons and icons, everything that comes from Firefox. Firefox does their own layout and UI. They create their own icons. We use them in Thunderbird. Unfortunately, Firefox, the user interface of Firefox is very bare bone. It's just a top toolbar with an address bar and the settings page. That's it. Everything else is your web page and browser. So there's not much that we can leverage. Thunderbird has a very complex UI with many sections. So throughout that time, throughout the years, we started creating our own icons, and we have some unique buttons that Firefox doesn't have. So we started implementing those, trying to keep it consistent with Toolkit. We reached a breaking point last year when the Firefox team decided to implement the Proton UI, which is great for a browser, doesn't work for us, unfortunately. It was too disconnected, too difficult to maintain and implement. And also the new icons that we're using weren't working properly for all the design language and the iconography that we needed for an email client. So we said, okay, let's jump the boat. Let's create our own brand identity. So you will start seeing these initial shift and initial detachment from the identical Firefox UI with custom icons and different color schemes, different layout organization, separated density control that you can change the density layout of your application if you want a larger, if you want more compact. You can increase or decrease the font size of the whole application. There are a lot of like small quality of life improvements that went into the application that honestly, I can stay here and talk for the next 2 hours about everything, but maybe we should focus on small things.
I mean, what I just heard was a coming-of-age story where a young adult is in the shadow of their parents and trying to make an identification for themselves.
Yes.
In a way. I mean, that's one way to put it. Because I feel like at some point, when you have two apps that share a lot of things, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I use Linux. I know about sharing libraries and sharing things between apps. I mean, I have the postcard to prove it. But at some point, a project wants to move a feature in a different direction, and then there just becomes this like overhead to develop that because you have the constraints of something else getting in your way.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the many issues that we had in the past, especially when we were a skeleton crew, is that the majority, pretty much like 95% of our day was spent in looking at what Firefox developers did, all the changes that they did, and how they broke our version, our Thunderbird UI, and just fixing it and patching it and porting those changes. That was the majority of our time spent on just that. And it took a long time to continue being reliable, continue relying on the basic architecture of Firefox to build and have a performant and stable release, but being independent as possible in order to not worry if something changes in the basic toolkit, because we are completely detached visually. Our buttons will not start like breaking around. Our menus will not look like awful things all scattered around. And the fact that we release multi-platform, Windows, macOS, and Linux, and we support every Linux distribution ever, adds many extra layers of complexity.
Yeah. Oh gosh, does it ever? In so many ways. And within your project and outside of it equally is just there's a lot of okay. I could probably speak a lot about that, but I'll pause myself because I too can go on and on. So it looks like there's a lot to get excited about when it comes to 102, but I also hear 114. There's something to be said about that too.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. There's a
Now
lot.
we're really getting ahead of ourselves, but I like doing it when it comes to like things we have to look forward to.
Yeah. One other thing that started in 102 and is going to see the full realization in 114 is the new address book that I would like to highlight. We did massive work to be vCard compliant. The vCard specs are the de facto specs for your contact information. So you can, before 91, we didn't use vCards. We were just storing our own preset of data, static data of your contact information in our static SQL database that came with your application with Thunderbird. And that's it. You could export that and import somewhere else, but it was like a cumbersome type of export because the data wasn't compatible. Now with the vCard specs, we absolutely respect vCard specs. So you can literally export your contacts from Thunderbird, import it into your Android contacts app or iOS apps, or do the other way around, export it from Outlook, export it from Android list, because all these major applications, they use the vCard specs. So now everything is compatible fully. And the work that went into the address book is the first glimpse of what will happen in 114 in terms of the UI. A lot of work happened to rebuild the entire widget, the basic tree widget, like the 3-pane with the list of address book, the list of contacts, and then the table view or like the list view, whatever. We've been using a Zool XUL tree, which is these kind of HTML, but uses a lot of JavaScript and C++ and creates things in the Shadow DOM to handle very long lists. Thunderbird is fast because you can have 10,000 messages all displayed all at once and not see a single slowdown hiccup, and that's it. Because thanks to the Zool tree element, we can reuse components. We don't have to generate that DOM element every time you print a new message, and we only render the message that you see in your viewport. So your full list is there, but it's not really there, so it's generated dynamically. It's all good. Recreating that thing in standard HTML and JavaScript took a lot of time because we needed to maintain the same performance. We needed to guarantee the same one-on-one experience without causing any problems to the users. But we needed to do it because Zool tree are a nightmare to manage. Everything is a Shadow DOM. Nothing is easily accessible. Styling those things is just god-awful. It's just like, it was horrible. And that's the main limitation that we had. So the things that you see in the address book is 102 is the first glimpse of what will happen in 114.
And I just want to say, like, as a non-technical user who barely understands what Alex just said, the new address book for me though is just so much more useful. There's really really useful fields in there, like adding a person's time zone, adding their chat contact info, being able to have multiple email addresses, multiple websites, multiple points of contact. And if I'm not mistaken, it will kind of act as like a launch pad for what you want to do in the address book. If you want to send an email, if you want to chat, if you want to schedule an appointment on your calendar. So just more useful in general, in addition to looking a lot better than it has before.
And from what I'm hearing, getting away from Zool or kind of like that whole thing that caused a lot of work, it's almost like, did anyone ever say, like, there is no development, there's only Zool? Okay, I'm so sorry I had to do that.
Yes.
I'm here all day, right? Okay, no, but seriously,
I really hope that some people got that reference, because that was
I'm sure.
Beckman, come on.
You'd be surprised the references that people get on YouTube. YouTube people pay attention. That's what I learned. To everything. If there's something in my background that shouldn't be there, they'll let me know. If my things I have hanging up in the background are just slightly uneven, like 5 people will let me know. They'll get it. But no, seriously, those are, I feel like, features that are really going to, like, round the edges to make everything more cohesive. And for me, it's already feature complete as far as what I use it for. So it's like, for me, I hope I notice some things, but it's like everything I want to do, I do. The only thing I feel like I would like to see some improvements on are the notifications, because I feel like they don't hook into the same backend subsystem that other Linux notifications hook into. So obviously, if you're using Thunderbird on Windows or Mac OS, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you do use Linux, then, in my experience, there's some integration to be done there. But you guys are tackling these things. Like, I feel like it's going to happen. Like, you're going to get this, and it's already great. So,
yeah, funny enough, 90, what is that? Like 95% of our user base is on Windows. Then I'm just, this is our average number, not accurate number, but more than 90% are on Windows, and then a large percentage is on macOS, and then probably like 2 or 3% are just like Linux users. And all of us developers, we are on Linux, because developing on Linux is way easier and faster. So the problem with the Linux notification thing is that we had to create our own thing, because the free desktop specifications for notification for every single distribution and desktop environment and toolkit, they're just all over the place. It's very hard to create one thing and support. With Windows and macOS, you have one API, you hook into that, that's it, and done. Linux is more icky, but we are improving. There are also extension developers that created some extensions to integrate it into your notification bar at the top or at the bottom, depending on which Linux distribution you're using. Integration with the KDE notification area better. There are a lot of things that we are working towards improving. It's just a lot difficult, and unfortunately, and this is gonna come out wrong for some users, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to cater to the NixOS with Arch, Spin, with Manjaro, whatever, Dolphin. Like, we cannot do it. Most of the times,
but I mean,
the
resources are there, the libraries are there. It's an open source project. So
yeah, exactly.
There's.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's nothing obviously except for knowledge and the understanding of how to develop it. But there's nothing beyond that stopping someone from making a very specific change that benefits just them if they want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that we're doing, and we are extremely pushing towards it, and thanks to, we have another developer in the team, which is called Jason as well. I guess every cool guy is named Jason. I don't know what's up with that.
At least has the first two letters JA in their name. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, it comes from that. Like, right. I don't know. It's just like born under the lucky star, whatever. But this developer is pushing to add and implement as many API as possible to hook into every single part of our application. So extensions developer, they don't even need to learn or understand our source code. They just need to hook into our API, and we will do everything for them, because our API will, you just send us a string what you want, and then our API will create the button to put it into this location for you, and it will look exactly cohesive and native and perfect. So we're doing also that for notifications. We are trying to open up as much as possible through API entry points to allow users to change the behavior and the aspect of Thunderbird without requiring massive knowledge of the whole code base. It's a very slow and cumbersome process, but we are aiming towards that.
So I think when I hear anything about technical debt, slow and cumbersome, difficult, time-consuming, or insert name of programming paradigm here, that means it's going to take a minute. To me, translates to we need the community involved. We need people developing on this, and I need people in my audience, if you're interested in development or just writing bugs, documentation, whatever it is your skill set is, we need you, because the mindset is often, this piece of software doesn't do X, so I can't use it. And it's dead to me. And then, but why? Okay, if you can't program, I get it. You could submit a wish list request. It would be nice if Thunderbird had this feature. Could you please consider this. And then maybe a developer wants to take that on. Or if something's bothering you and you are a developer, maybe you might want to be the one to tackle that. I want as many people in my audience to get as involved as they can, if you have any interest in development, because I really don't like hearing developers being stressed out in any way. I know, right? Development and stress, you could correlate the two. You could also correlate cuss words and all these. I won't get into any of that. Believe me, I know a lot of developers. I know what it's like. But my point is, getting as many people involved in this, because sometimes we just, put up with something without thinking, but something could be done about that. I don't really have to put up with it. I think I should let somebody know that this is bothering me. And then if it's bothering other people, then maybe they can jump in. So is there a place that I could send people that would have some information about getting started to help out?
Absolutely. We have our DTN, which is developers.thunderbird.net documentation, which we update daily almost. And it starts from the very basic setup process to build Thunderbird from scratch. And then has a lot of documentation on how to build extension APIs or how to hook into our extension API and build extensions. One thing that I really want to stress out, unfortunately, it happens more often than I would like to admit, that we have feature requests from users and our answer is like, I'm sorry, we're not going to support this because they're very unique targeted features on something that maybe only 10 users need. And right. Or even if this feature is very important for 1,000 users, they seem like a lot, but we have 20 million users that don't need it. And maybe that we have, not maybe, remove the maybe, we have way more incumbent priorities that we need to fix. So our reply, which is always the same, is that we're not going to do it, but you can absolutely do it. And we're not going to prevent anyone from submitting a patch, creating an extension, supporting an extension, which actually we have some extension developers, they actually make money off of their extension. You can monetize your extension. You can ask for a subscription for extra features. We absolutely allow that. We don't block anything. So when we say we cannot do it, it's because it's a resource issue and resource limitation, and we have other priorities. But it's not because we don't care about the user case. When we use the word it's an edge case, it means that it's not worth the investment in time and resources for us at that time. And but we will never block anyone from contributing.
And that's always a hard decision to make. That's a hard response to give people, because when I first started learning about open source, that's what I thought. I was kind of gleefully naive about what was possible. Like, it's open source. I can anything I want can be in there. But the reality of it is that there's such a wide range of specific needs and specific wants and specific preferences that people have, and it's just so difficult to meet everybody there and give them what they want. But the first step is absolutely just speaking up and saying you want that.
And one thing I feel like people can do is, if a developer says, we don't have the resources for this right now, a response, if they're a polite person, could be, okay, well, thank you for considering that. And, that's it. But maybe that person could even respond, okay, I understand. And then, are there any developers out there that would like to tackle this? I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Yeah. But also, I feel like there does have to be some understanding too, because people could have what they feel is a great idea. And if it doesn't get accepted, then, it's unfortunate and they're bummed out about that. But also sometimes people ask for features that are like so creative and just so, wow, why aren't we doing that? Because that is like the most clever idea I've heard in a long time. But then you also have people that will ask for a feature and you're like, well, I don't really understand that. Like somebody submitting like, we need kitten mode in Thunderbird. Hear me out. Kittens everywhere. Every button is a kitten. It'd be the best thing ever. And then it's like, okay, I like kittens a lot, but I don't really know if that's what we want to do. And then, of course, somebody could come out with a kitten mode extension. And here I am opening my mouth. It's probably going to happen now. But the point is, it just sometimes it might seem like a good idea, and it is to that person, might not be to everyone else. So there is that balance there, but I absolutely feel like people should just get their opinions out there. And one example of this is, and this is way before my career blossomed and things. I remember the Mate project, the Mate desktop had an issue that was driving me crazy. And it's called a paper cut. I call it that anyway. These small little nagging things. And I'm like, this is really annoying me. And then it's a legitimate bug. So developer, whatever it was, confirmed it. But we don't have the resources right now to fix that. That's actually a massive thing. It doesn't seem like it because to you, the user, you're only seeing like one little glitch. But what you don't understand is that behind that seemingly small glitch are so many lines of code you wouldn't even believe it. So someone else responded, well, yeah, that's annoying me too. And then someone else responded, that's also annoying me. Here's $100. I'm going to contribute to this. And then another person's like, here's 20. Then another person's like, here's 10. Here's 50. I mean, no, the developer never asked for this at all. But then like donations, like it started picking up. I'm like, whoa, I'm so glad I complained about that. And then at that point, this developer that I'm assuming felt like overworked is like, people are willing to contribute money to get this fixed. Okay, maybe something could be done about this. And I'm pretty sure it was fixed, actually. So I'm not saying everybody should think that donations are the only way to get things and we need to bribe developers or anything like that. Totally not. But my point is, even just letting people know, encouraging other people to take it on, I feel it's probably a good way to handle it.
That reconnects greatly with our work to destroy technical debt, because if a lot of people, but some people, they gave us some criticism, like, why are you building the front-end interface of Thunderbird in HTML, CSS, JavaScript? That will add a little bit of performance issue because you're using JavaScript. Even if it runs on your Gecko render engine of Firefox, it will have some performance issue, which is absolutely a valid point. We're doing that because those are standard web technologies that everyone can use. The entry point to contribute to Thunderbird, once the full transition to standard technologies is done, is going to be almost non-existent. Everyone can change things, anyone to help. And we're doing that to simplify a lot of things. For us, it's going to be way easier to update and change features without, now I have to change 300 lines of C++ code that if I do something that I'm going to create a segmentation fault and the entire application crashes. It's more manageable from that point of view.
Right.
It's still like a balance thing, of course, but yeah.
And sometimes performance issues don't matter as much as you think they do. I think people hear performance issue and they're like, oh my God, that's horrible. Like a performance issue that slows down your entire computer and makes your CPU chug along. Yeah, that's a pretty serious performance issue. But from my perspective, I'll compare like the Mate desktop and the GNOME desktop, and I'll get comments from people like, I can't use GNOME because the memory usage is too bloated. I'm like, dude, you have 32 gigs of RAM. What's that?
Do you still get people complaining about that on a regular basis? Or
yeah, because it's like I can't remember what the numbers were. I'm pretty sure I remember GNOME being 800 megs of RAM. But obviously, if you have a 2 gig system, that's a problem, legit. Sure. But you should not be using GNOME at that point, or anything modern for that matter. But what I will notice is that, like, they'll say we should use Mate instead because it's lightweight. Well, it is lighter weight, but it's like anytime I install Mate, it's about 100 megabytes less than GNOME, honestly. And then I feel like the people that are complaining are one of two people. Usually they have a resource-starved system. They have a legitimate reason to care about that 100 megabytes. But there's a lot of people that'll have 16 or 32 gigabytes, of which maybe 40% is used. And I'm thinking there's a lot bigger things to worry about. So if we have a performance issue and it's unnoticeable, keep using the tools and things you're already using if they work, because at some point, I mean, technology keeps expanding. I'm not saying we should waste resources, but we do need to kind of understand what is a legitimate performance issue and what isn't.
But system memory is there to be used.
That is true.
Yeah. Circling back to 114, one thing that, and I will share with you some mock-ups that you can use in this video if you want. You can just put it as an overlay and things like that.
Maybe I'll just do an intro or put it in the outro or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. All the things that I'm talking about, I will send you screenshots and mock-ups so you have visual reference. But 114 is going to be a drastic user interface change. is going to look like a completely different application, but it's going to stay familiar. So if your workflow were not going to be destroyed, it's going to be improved. One issue that we have currently in Thunderbird, we have so many features that we don't know where to put them anymore. If you open submenus of a submenu of a submenu, everything is hidden. I could potentially ask you, even if you know that you can convert an email that you receive into a task and convert that task into a calendar event to have a notification when you need to execute that task that is connected to your email. And then when it's done, you can archive that email and close that task. Did you know you could do that?
Well, I knew about those individual features, and I didn't know that they were interconnected at that point. I don't know if I'm really the normal user. Well, I guess that's to be seen, but also I use a completely different to-do list manager and
of course,
calendar outside of Thunderbird, not because Thunderbird is bad or anything, but because the device is a different device. Long story. But I think it would be really cool to explore that, though.
Yeah, and that's one of the main feedback that we get a lot of the time. Like, users ask, "Oh, I wish I could do this," and the reply is that, "Well, you actually can." But it's not exposed in the UI. You need to access that submenu or that context menu under there. And that's the issue. Like, we have a lot of powerful features that are not used at all, and we maintain because they're not exposed in context. They're not accessible. They're not a lot of those issues. So we need to completely stop and, okay, let's think about the UI not as let's inherit what Firefox does and try to make it work for an email client, but create our own UI. How does an email client should look and behave to be as optimal as possible with all the customization needed? This is something that we strive completely different from Firefox. I love Firefox. I use Firefox every day.
Yeah, me too.
But they're removing more and more every release. They're removing customization options. They're removing some settings. They hide other settings because they think they have some telemetry data that inform them. I don't entirely agree with them, especially in the context of the email client is a very personal thing. Managing your email is extremely personal, and one solution doesn't fit all users. I hate when someone says, yeah, but I'm a power user, so I should have this. And someone else comes in, I am a newbie, and I should use it this way. Like, no, users are as different as possible. We shouldn't categorize users in predefined boxes. We need an interface that can work for everyone and can be changed and manipulated and customized to adapt to whatever single person need might have. Not cater for power users or for just newbies or for just enterprise users or for just your grandma. No, it should be usable by everyone and customizable to their needs. And this is something that will happen in 1.14. It's going to be a shock for many users.
I'm
looking forward to it. I like disruption. I mean, what can I say? I like something new.
It might not be it won't be a bad shock. And I think that we were talking about having something that resembles a classic view, right? Or is that, do I have that right, Alex?
Like the vertical view, or
I think it already has that, doesn't it? Actually, now I'm going to be the guy.
Yeah, we do, but it's broken. It's just barely usable.
Really, I've been using it just fine. That's interesting.
Really? You have a very large monitor.
About a different view then, because I've been playing around with that actually. So,
I mean, in terms of the actual UI overhaul, like if you don't like that, I think there will be a way.
Yeah.
To sort of.
I see what you mean. Like the classic view. Yeah.
That's what I mean by classic view is Thunderbird now, how it looks now, or how it's laid out right now. You'll be able to choose.
Yeah, exactly.
Between the two, modern or classic. So we're hoping that
I think that's we could customize our email client and have the information presented to us the way that we would best like to see it. And I think the moral of the story is it's got to be understood by everybody. Developers cannot and they will never make everybody happy. It's just not going to happen. The goal is to make as many people happy as possible, but everybody understands you're just not going to be everything to everyone. And that's true outside of technology. And it's funny when I hear about, separating users into power users and beginners. I feel like what you're actually describing is the anxiety scale, because power users are the most anxious to change, right? The newbies might not notice because, like, I put Linux in front of a complete newbie. They see the Firefox icon or the Google Chrome icon. They click on it. It shows up on the screen and they can't even tell anything's different. But a power user, if they see so much as one icon different, they just completely flip out. So I feel like it's like the anxiety scale, but nobody calls it that. But I'm going to call it that. But when it all comes down to it, we're all human. We have our preferences, we have our working styles and things, and we want those things to be respected and not interfered with. But that balance, I don't feel like there's ever going to be a time where that balance is easier to strike. We just do the best we can and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, every community out there has his fair share of toxicity or bad apples, bad comments, and things like that. We are expert in our fields. We hired extremely experienced developers and designers to make things right. And we are going the extra mile to implement as much customization as possible so if the user really hate what we're doing, you can absolutely change and you can absolutely make it look like Thunderbird 91. You can absolutely do it. We're not going to stop you.
Yeah.
But the default, we're going to propose what we think with our years of experience, what a good default and usability standard should be. And this is not a FU to your 20 years of experience with Thunderbird type of Linux, is type of user. It's not, I've been using the common thing that we get. I've been using Thunderbird for 20 years. Now you're destroying the Thunderbird that I know and love. No, we're not doing this to upset you. It's just not. Right. This is not what we're doing. But yeah, it's a common thing, unfortunately, especially since Thunderbird is heavily community driven. There's this sense of ownership that, like, people are removing things underneath your feet and look what's happening. I didn't agree with this change, which I can understand, but there's a fine balance on everything.
Yeah, I mean, people assume that just because it's open source, it means that they automatically get certain, like, liberties with that, which means, well, it's more secure because it's open source. No, it can be more secure, and it's enabled to be more secure because it's open source. And people can audit the code because it's open source. It doesn't mean anyone has audited it. It doesn't mean anyone has looked at it. It means that people can. There's a possibility for it to be better. Doesn't mean it is, but it's better to have that possibility than to not have that possibility. And we are running a little long, but I wanted to just talk about one of my favorite features that that was mentioned several times, and I totally neglected to even mention it. The cross-platform nature is amazing. I feel like we can't, like, underappreciate that. It is amazing because even when I have someone who is, like, wanting to try Linux and possibly switch to it, maybe they're running Windows. Okay, give them Thunderbird. Give them Firefox. Give them the apps that will exist on the target platform. Get used to doing your work in those apps. And then when you get to that other platform, then you take those apps with you. And then there's this mindset that's weird. It's like there's these, like, single platform apps are weird to me. It's like Safari. I'm a huge fan of Safari. I'm like, that's great, but you're stuck on one platform. On Mac OS, you can install Firefox. So why would you choose anything else? And then why would anyone choose Apple Mail when you could have an email client? If you have a different OS at home than you do at home, then that's super great because you could carry your apps with you. I feel like the cross-platform nature is the future. And here I am being an IT analyst, right? But it's already showing, right?
Yes.
Oh, I have so many comments on this kind of stuff.
Well, we need to talk again then.
Yeah, we really should. I just want to say that, obviously we're all Linux enthusiasts here, but what I like about what Thunderbird does is it's not about treating Linux as a first-class citizen. It's about treating every operating system as the first-class citizen, right? Every user, not we're going to, specialize and customize and cater to just this group. And that so and the way that this all comes together in 114 is that one of our highest priorities is setting up Cloud Sync for your profiles.
Oh, you're going there. I see.
Ooh, okay. I wasn't going to mention profiles now because that's another conversation on my end too.
Through Firefox accounts. So imagine being able to just, be logged into your Firefox account across all your machines, all your operating systems, and being able to keep that data in sync. And being able to eventually keep all that data in sync with the Thunderbird mobile version that will be.
Oh my God, you're dropping bombs right now.
Yeah, I'm going by.
Pay attention to the end.
Pay attention to the end, kids. Yeah.
That is so cool. I think by having that organization, you are removing almost like a half a page of Ansible code from my config system.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. Like you are. That's what that represents.
It's really needed. It's the team. When I came on board, I have nothing to do with this. I'm just trying to amplify it and message it, right? But they have a really promising long-term vision for Thunderbird users. They're thinking years down the road and preparing for it right now, and that's what excites me about it.
I think we're going to have another conversation about the mobile version, but I have to know which mobile platforms.
Android.
Okay, we're going to start with Android because
that's what I thought, because Apple has a history of trying to force out any app that does the same thing as one of their own apps.
The honest truth about it is that we have a solution where we can hit the ground running with Android and start talking about and planning an iOS version. That's where we're at right now. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
That seems to be the standard way it goes with developing mobile, because there is another layer with Apple devices where you might have the best app ever. It doesn't get approved. What? I developed it. Put it in the App Store.
So it's not about. It's absolutely not about saying Android users are more important to us. It's just about saying this is more realistic and attainable with the resources that we have to begin with. So, yeah.
Totally agreed.
It's exciting. It's all really exciting stuff.
Wow.
The next year is going to be crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Yeah, multi-platform is extremely important for us, and we're trying to support as much as possible. One of the issues that we will try to solve with 114 is visual consistency. One thing that we tried, and it doesn't work that well, is we try to make look Thunderbird native for each operating system. So Thunderbird on Windows looks like a Windows application. On macOS looks like a macOS application. On a GTK desktop, we try to detect the GTK through CSS code, and we try to detect the desktop environment. In KDE, we use like the native title bar and menu bars and things like that. But it's just so much. It's extremely difficult to maintain, and most of the times happens pretty much every day. Things that work on macOS don't work on Windows, or vice versa. Things that work on Windows don't work on Linux. So a lot of time is spent on multi-platform support. And a lot of these issues we can solve and improve our development reliability and development speed by creating a consistent, cohesive design and visual identity that is the same. So it will look less native, but it will be better in the long run for us in terms of development, and also for users, because if you use Thunderbird on Linux and you switch on Windows, it's exactly the same. You don't have that temporary shock. It's like, icons are different, buttons are different, text is different. What's happening? Which is It's a very minor inconvenience, but it's more from a development and resources point of view. Having a consistent UI that it's identical everywhere, it's great. We have some users that they do an incredible things that I don't recommend, but they take the profile folder, they put it on a virtual server, on a NAS or a Linode thing, and they connect remotely to that through Thunderbird. You can set up your profile to be anywhere in your system or outside.
That makes me uncomfortable.
We are users using the same profile shared on a Windows, macOS, and Linux machine, and it turned into like a crapshoot. So that was one of the initial reasons why we need an account syncing solution.
Right.
The first thing is that, okay, we have IMAP. We have IMAP emails. Those are already account syncing things, but they don't really work because you don't want, like, if you lose your IMAP account, that you cannot sync your IMAP email. And then if you have multiple accounts, you don't want all those accounts synced into one IMAP account. You want something that it's separate. You want your Thunderbird accounts that syncs your 1 or 20 different email accounts all together. And that's extremely important for mobile because setting up an email account on mobile is still terrible. Sometimes your IMAP address, outbox, inbox, they don't work. Sometimes your ports are not there. You need to change whatever settings. If you just log into your Thunderbird account, everything syncs up automatically, and you have all your accounts on your mobile device. It's way easier. So those two things will come hand in hand at the end of the 114 cycle to simplify a lot the usability and the experience across multiple platforms.
I was literally fighting with profiles yesterday, so I'm happy to hear this. So I'm hearing a lot of great things, and this is a lot of fun. I wish we could keep this going forever.
Yeah.
And I feel like, well, maybe we can all chat again about this, because I feel like it's, some people might think that, really, you're talking about Thunderbird? Yeah, like, it's something that should be talked about, because you might think it's just an email client, but it's not. It's what it represents and what you could use it for, and the separation and the control, the communication, and putting everything in your fingertips. I mean, that's worth a lot. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation, and I had a lot of fun with this one. So I hope we could do it again.
Yeah, we will, and we'll get Ryan to join us next time so that
Yeah.
he can have his own perspective too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks,
Well,
Jay.
I appreciate everybody that is tuning into this, watching this, and thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and talking about Thunderbird, because this is an exciting conversation, and if talking about an email client is an exciting conversation, that means you're doing something right.
Awesome. That's reassuring.
That's good to hear.
Stay on the same. We'll just stay on the same path. Then that's great. All right, Jay.
Lovely.
Thanks a lot, dude.
Thank you again.
So, considering the excitement and the passion in this conversation, I think it's fair to say that, well, email clients are not dead. I really enjoyed talking to Alex and Jason. It was a ton of fun, and I hope to do it again sometime. Anyway, thank you guys so much for checking out this interview. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.